So, Bones
Okay.
and I have been discussing local crime rates, kind of wanting to get off this national Ferris wheel media circus. And one of the observations and questions that we had uh, is the violent crime in Utah, more specifically in Davis or Weber counties, increasing? Is it decreasing? And what's going on with it? So we wanted to kind of get back to being a little bit local and look at what's going on right here at home. Uh, Bones, any input on that, man?
Yeah, I took a look at a lot of things. What triggered me to start investigating this is the shootings that are happening close to my home, close to my house. Um, so I start looking at statistics, and Utah as a whole has a decrease in crime rate. You know, we have an increase in population and a decrease in crime rate. What can we relate that to?
Well, that's a good question because I found the same thing, although I didn't get the actual percentage of the increase of population. I found some interesting things. It's showing that we're 36% below the national average for violent crime, and our crime rate has dropped by 35% over the last 4 years. Uh, we found, during our pre investigation conversations, I had a question about it compared to the 90s, and it looks like we're well below what it was in the 90s, 92 being the year that it spiked, and we haven't even come close to hitting that. But the interesting thing that we found during our discussions, Bones, is that these statistics are all per capita, which makes it kind of elusive to determine if it's getting more violent or not. Now, per capita statistics, for those that don't know, are your odds of being the victim of a violent crime per 100,000 people. In 2020, as an example, per 100,000 people, you had 3.5 people that would be a victim of violent crime, as opposed to 2023, where you are at about a 2.8% or 2.8 per 100,000 people of being the victim of a violent crime. So it's a percentage when we start talking per capita statistics. It doesn't give you the actual number of shootings, aggravated assaults, homicides that are occurring. With the increase in population, we do have a decrease in crime rate, but it's really difficult to determine whether we're actually seeing a decrease in violent number of violent crimes.
On that, so some of the smaller communities um, put out a moratorium on building. In other words, the building stops here, right? We don't want to increase anymore. This is where we're standing with the population and
Right.
and the buildings that we have. The larger areas, the cities like Salt Lake, uh, Clearfield, Davis County, none of that happened. They just started building and building and building, and you got five story apartments across the Wasatch Front on Davis County. You know,
Right.
uh, and they're large complexes. Lord knows how many people can get in there. So crime rate per capita inside the counties. Take a look at Davis County has increased.
Right. Some areas have
So
had significant increases, and a lot of that has been due to, like you mentioned, some of these cities that didn't put on the building moratoriums where the populations have seriously increased. Uh, Davis County, you mentioned Clearfield, Layton, uh, West Point, the building going on in
Syracuse.
these areas. Yeah, Syracuse, the building going on down here, and the population's coming in, and yet in our local areas, you mentioned right around your home. I did kind of a memory dive into the things that have been going on here. We get the local neighborhood alerts and things of that nature. West Point is off the charts for domestic violence shootings, homicides. I, I'm hearing almost weekly about another shooting that has occurred in West Point. Yet Syracuse, which is one of the fastest growing cities in Davis County, you're not getting those kind of reports. They're a little more rare. You may hear about one every 2 or 3 months. So even with the increase of population in some of these areas, you're not seeing the increase in crime. Yet in Davis County, there is a significant increase, and it's coming out of these other areas. I don't know whether it's the type of area. Uh, I don't know the exact wording that I would use here,
Oh,
but
it's lower cost per housing. You know,
your lower
have a lower cost.
income areas. Okay.
Yeah, so they call my area an affordable housing area. Looking at it, when I moved in here, we bought our home for a mere 50,000, where the increase in realty since we bought our home is in the 400 to $500,000 range, and they're calling that affordable housing.
Right.
Um, where the apartments, like the downtown apartments on State Street, one bedroom runs near 2,000, two bedrooms 2,500 or better. You know,
Mm-hmm.
uh, you move a little further into the apartments, and they can decrease to around 2,000 for a two bedroom. So it depends on where you're at, what they cost. You were talking what apartments in Syracuse were going for. I can't remember exactly what
Yeah,
you
I
said, but they're
the apartments in Syracuse, the majority of them for a two-bedroom are up almost at 3,500, but you can find some of the newer ones that are very nice. It's a two-bedroom at around 2,500 a month. Um, the areas that I'm noticing a lot in crime rate increase, they do collate with a population increase, but it also has to do, I think, with the industry within that area. Perhaps you look at areas in Weber County, the two most violent cities, Ogden City and Riverdale. Well, that's where all of your business is at. And they talk about an increase in property crimes and thefts, but a decrease in violent crimes in those areas. Yet they're still two of the most violent cities in Weber County and in the state, I might add.
right. Uh, yeah, Ogden has, I grew up in South Ogden, but spent a lot of time in Ogden. Uh, Ogden has always had a reputation for being a bad city. Um, Al Capone had something to say about Ogden.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, he
yeah,
actually
I ain't
said
going.
that 25th Street was a little too violent for him.
Yeah, I'm not going back there.
And 25th Street in its heyday, we talked, or I touched upon violent crime. The highest rates Utah had seen was in 1992. I was working as a young officer in Ogden in 1992, and I can tell you, when I started there, historic 25th Street, every with rare exception, every business on that street was a bar, and they were all specific. You had a country bar, you had a biker bar, you had a black bar, you had Hispanic clubs. You had, a little bit of
Stripper club.
everything, diversity. There was a bar for everybody down
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
and you had fights every night. You had 2 or 3 stabbings or shootings every week. You Ogden passed an ordinance and they started phasing and taking away liquor licenses. And they said, okay, we can only have 2 bars per city block. And they started closing them down. Of course, the crime rate dropped a little. You don't have the diversity down there. Yet on 25th Street, you're still going to have a fight every weekend or multiple fights every weekend. You're going to have a stabbing just about every weekend. You're going to have a shooting at least every other week down on 25th Street. That's not even mentioning the gang violence with the increase of gang members within the Ogden area. The place has gone nuts. So I
Right.
understand how the crime rate there affects Weaver
Uh,
County as a whole.
yeah, in my life, pre 90s, it was 70s, uh, where I was in my teenage years.
Mm-hmm.
But we had a saying that Arlo Guthrie was wrong. You could get anything you wanted on 25th Street, Ogden.
And you could. They had the
Not
underground there.
not Arlo Guthrie and Alice's restaurant.
Yeah.
25th Street was the place to go.
Yep.
Um, I remember going down there getting bootleg whiskeys. There was one bar, underage kids could get kegs of beer out the back door. Uh,
Yeah.
on and on and on. But
Exactly. You could do anything and get away with about anything down there.
yeah, you could get caught too. You
Yeah.
know,
Well, I remember being
they
a
like
kid, like you said, in the 70s. Uh, my father was actually a police officer in Ogden during that time. And we used to get in the car with my mom and for excitement, we'd drive down 25th Street. Of course, you had the windows rolled up and the doors locked. You drive down and just look at the variety of people and what's going on. And just one drive down 25th Street, you were going to see a fight.
oh
It
yeah,
didn't matter what time of
yeah,
night you went down there. That's just the way it was.
yep, yep.
Today, they've turned
20
it more into a
tourist
center of the city
tourist
tourist attraction.
attraction. The bars are pretty much gone. There's a few still left down there, but they're not like they used to be.
Right. And they're more tightly controlled.
Yeah.
Uh,
Anyway, Ogden has a very lengthy history of violence.
as being one of the top 10 cities in the U.S. for violence.
Yes. Yeah. And it dates back to when Ogden became a city.
Yeah.
Clear back,
Well, it was a
So,
railroad town.
yeah.
It was a major railroad hub, and so you had all that diversity, and that's why the bootlegging, the bars, the prostitution, all those things started occurring. So we
Yeah.
understand how Weaver County, Ogden, Riverdale was another one that was mentioned as very violent, and their population has seen significant increase. Of course, it's one of the outer lying communities right off of Ogden, adjoins Ogden. A lot of businesses there, a lot of apartment
Yep.
buildings.
Just over the bridge.
Yeah, a
That's
lot
all
of
you got
bleed
to do.
over, a lot of bleed over from those areas. But as we get back out into Davis County and talking specifically, the reason we decided to have this discussion, uh, you noticed in your neighborhood the
Yeah,
increase.
about a year ago, it was when it kind of started, but they'd build a bunch of new apartments down on State Street and pretty much ran a lot of the businesses out of there to build the apartments. And Rancho Market had moved in, apartment complex that's just north of the market there. Uh, Gang related shooting in April 2024. Older gentleman, I guess, had got shot in the foot, which is nowhere near the heart. But a friend of mine, my neighbor, heard the gunshots, and we thought let's go check it out. I don't like gunshots in my neighborhood. But we got down there. The police were rousting the, call them perpetrators, out, chased them down in the car into the Rancho Market. Had a bird's eye view of the car. Had individuals out on the asphalt, face down, hand behind their back. And you could see from where I was at, there was one of those monster Glock 9 MMs, and hands reach in front of one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So Lord knows what other firearms were in that car. Then recently, just the other night, SWAT and the local police. I don't know how many police officers were down there, but I counted like 8 from where my point of view, which is probably 300 yards away from where it was going down.
Mm-hmm.
But they were shots. I thought it was firecrackers. And Clint come in and said, come in the house. She was outside. She come in and said, the police and the SWAT teams down the street on Ross Drive. I'm like, holy hell. So I walked outside and straight down my street into Ross Drive, which is a circle. The house that faces my house, they were trying to megaphone coach people out of the house. Took them quite a while. There was two. One come out. They made them come out one at a time with their hands up above their head and stuff, yelling at them the whole way. Put them face down on the asphalt, and the rest of them. And there was only 2 of them, but I don't know what went on inside the house. Nothing was ever publicized after that. But there have been some things, like one lady taking pot shots at people walking up and down the street from her house.
Wow.
Got arrested. Yeah. Other guy went nuts in his bedroom during the pandemic era.
Mm-hmm.
And locked himself in the bedroom with a automatic rifle. No shots were fired, but it took several police officers to get him out. But that's, before this stuff happening, the neighborhood that we moved into, you could leave your doors unlocked.
Right.
That's how trustworthy the neighborhood. And that's the changes that I've seen in my neighborhood.
Okay. Well, you touched on and the pandemic, and I think that has something to do with the decrease in the crime rate over the last 5 years or so. During the pandemic, people weren't working. They were under a lot of stress, locked down in their homes. I remember during that time, you and I actually having a discussion about the increase in violent crime. Domestic violence started soaring. People were frustrated. A lot of alcohol sales went up. I remember at that time we had tracked that and looked at it. Alcohol sales had gone up. Domestic violence had started peaking again. And so this decrease we're seeing now, a lot of the statistics we're reading, they're talking we are 35% below pre-pandemic levels. So the pandemic definitely had something to do with the peak in violent crimes during that era. The 90s, again, still the most violent era in these areas. And like you mentioned, these are outerlying areas where you live, where I live. We didn't see those kind of things. You didn't have to lock your doors. You didn't worry about crime occurring in your neighborhood. Nowadays, I don't think anybody's going to leave their door unlocked. You still got home invasions you hear about occasionally. You've got crime rates that are still soaring. Again, we've mentioned right in the areas surrounding where we're at. We're hearing a lot of shootings, some of them gang related during parties, drive-bys. What do you think is causing some of this, Bones? Any?
Well, I think the increase in population, and then the way the apartments are, they're stacked, and you got to pay a lot of money for a small place. They're stacked sometimes 5 stories high. And then being able to afford um, the rent on these places has been a problem for people. We've dealt with that kind of thing through our industry, trying to keep up with inflation, increases in salaries and that kind of thing. But it's been what I'll call astronomical the last few years. Um, and we'll call it pre-Trump
Yeah.
era.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't know if that can be changed, um, but you got a lot of stress on people,
Mm-hmm.
you know. I think stress is a big factor. Um, Stress causes people to use drugs, alcohol, whatever. Um, and once that happens, your ability to reason kind of goes away, and you can talk yourself pretty much into doing anything at that point, you
Right.
know.
Right. How you
And or
react.
if you're with other people doing all of that, as a group, you can come up with some really good shit
Yeah.
to do. Oh,
So here's
so
another thought on that. We talk population increase, and you're attributing by your thought population increase has got a serious impact on it. My question then would be, where is this increase coming from? Because what we're seeing is an influx of people from other areas. So in Utah, we had a culture, and yes, there were some violent areas, but for the most part, the culture was not as violent as the national average. This influx of people, they're coming from these areas where these national averages are much higher. So you're bringing in a different type of people that have a different mentality, and where 20 years ago, if I had an issue with my neighbor, I'd have probably talked to him over the fence and we'd have had a peaceful discussion and resolved it. You're bringing in people who are shoot first, ask questions later type folks, where they weren't raised that way. So we're bringing in a different culture as we bring in this rise in population, and this mix of culture and how we deal with stress and how we deal with issues with those around us is changing. Would you say there's any validity to that argument?
exactly, it's an all-inclusive thing. I don't think it's pinpointed on any one given issue, but you have a bunch of issues combined that can cause people to make violent acts. And if they were raised that way, raised in that type of environment, they're going to act out that way. So there's no discredit on what you had to say. Um, so I think you got things coming at all angles on this.
Right. Well, and then you add into that the political climate, the division that's being created, the arguments from one side to the other. You see it in the way people are handling those things, and a lot of frustrations, a lot of threats being thrown around. Uh, it's again, like you said, it's an all-inclusive mix. But as an overall, um, it appears violence per capita in most areas is decreasing. Property crimes are on the rise, and as you said, with the prices of things, your thefts, um, they're going to go up. People have got to figure out how to make their money, and if they can't make it, they're going to do whatever they have to. Uh, I don't know as there's a complete resolution to say the areas have become more violent or if it's because there's more people per capita, your odds of being the victim of a violent crime have gone down. However, with that many
Yeah,
more people, uh,
it depends
your
on,
odds actually
violent.
increase. So
Yeah,
where's
yeah,
the
it depends on where
balance?
you're at.
Yeah, where's the
Depends on where you're
balance?
at. It depends on where you're at. So if I'm out, let's say near Mountain Green in the dark, I feel pretty safe.
Mm-hmm.
Other than if there's a late night hunter not pointing his gun where he should be, you
Right.
know. Um, uh, but if I'm downtown Ogden in the middle of the night, I might be I might be looking around. I'd be head spinning pretty much,
Right.
you know. So uh, that's what I think about that. And in my investigation, I wanted to add this: the media puts out that Utah has had an increase in law enforcement shootings.
I am glad you touched on that, Bones, because that is a subject that is near and dear to me. Uh, Again, I was an officer in Ogden City from 1985 to 1999. In that 14-year period, um, I worked mostly the graveyard shift and I did a stint on the SWAT team. I was also in the gang unit for 3 years. During that 14 years in Ogden City, there were three officer related shootings. One of those was an undercover, and it wasn't in Ogden City, it just involved Ogden officers. It was an undercover thing that went awry, and it was in an outer lying city. One of them was a daylight burglary. One officer stopped a suspect. The suspect drew and fired at the officer. The officer fired, I think, hit him in the leg. The other was a rape in progress at probably the most violent spot in the city. The officer got there, suspect began to run, reached into his waistband, the officer shot. I knew both officers well. It affected them severely. We were trained that you did not pull your firearm unless you had to. At that time in Ogden City, we were probably the most well trained department in the state, I would venture to wage. Most of the instructors for the state law enforcement arrest control came out of Ogden City. Ogden City had a philosophy that you didn't escalate force unless you had to. You didn't put your hand on your gun or draw your gun unless you had to. As far as impact weapons, we were allowed to carry a blonde wood nightstick. Blonde wood. Couldn't be stained brown, couldn't be stained black. A blonde wood nightstick. And the reasoning behind it was we were not to show force and escalate. We were taught to de-escalate. We wore dress pants with stripes on them, nice shirts. We weren't in tack gear. When we showed up, we were trained to de-escalate and to utilize your training. One of my first instances, I was being trained. I had a field training officer with me who happened to be one of the state instructors. And we had a gentleman pull a knife out. I reached for my gun. The academy had kind of trained me that way, and that's what I thought. I can escalate by one. My training officer, being just miraculously trained and years of experience, with his left hand stopped me from drawing my gun, and with his right hand cracked the guy in the wrist with his nightstick, disarming him, put him in cuffs. I got dinged and got my butt chewed for even reaching for my gun. Now, this is a suspect with a knife. Today's law enforcement's a little different. As you mentioned, they're in TAC gear. They show up in numbers. These are things we trained against. Show of force was on the scale of escalation. You have one suspect, you don't go in there with 5 guys in TAC gear. You go in with 1 or 2 officers and you try to de-escalate. My son showed me a video just 2 days ago as we were discussing this. There's an actual video out there, a domestic violence call. You've got a guy standing in the kitchen, not by the counter, middle of the kitchen floor, screaming and hollering. You've got 2 officers, their body cam footage, 2 officers standing at one door, entering the kitchen on one side, an officer on the door whose body cam this video came from on the door on the other side, and the guy's girlfriend is sitting on the couch. Now, the situation, apparently she had cheated on him and he'd had enough and was, he's telling the officers, I know how this is going to end. You're going to shoot me. You're going to shoot me. He's unarmed. You can see his hands. He's unarmed. The video shows the officer's weapon drawn, aimed at the guy the entire time, peeking around the corner, not entering the room, peeking around the corner, trying to talk to this guy. No, you don't want to do that. No, and I don't want to shoot you. And the guy's asking him, have you ever shot somebody? Because today's going to be the day. The guy is priming him and putting it in his head. You're going to shoot me. You're going to shoot me. You're going to shoot me. Again, 3 visible officers. 1 suspect standing in the middle of the kitchen. They ask him if the girl can leave, and he says, sure, I'm not mad at her. I want to kill the guy. Bring him. I'll kill him right in front of you. They go to take the wife out the door. The guy walks across, follows the officers out the door, grabs a pair of scissors off the counter, is following them down the hall. They turn. One officer shoots him with a taser. Before the taser can take effect, and you can see he's going to the ground, you hear gunshots, and they shot and killed the guy. Now, as my son and I watched this video, he's saying, why did it come to that? This isn't right. Again, these are officers, they're dressed in TAC gear. They've got weapons that look like they came out of a video game. My question was, first of all, why is his gun drawn? This is an unarmed suspect. You got 3 guns drawn on this guy. Why are the guns drawn? And why isn't one officer on one side of the room distracting him while the other runs in and takes him down? He's unarmed in the middle of the room. What I'm seeing in this instance are officers who have 0 confidence, 0 ability in their training. And what I saw was an escalation of force. What I saw was these officers manipulated into doing a shooting. They were afraid to go hands-on with this guy, with at least 3-on-1 and an unarmed suspect that's out of control. If I'm out of control and you're pointing a gun at me, you're escalating that situation. As an officer, that gun should be in the holster. You should have your hands visible, talking in a calm voice. If you can't de-escalate him, distract him while the other officer goes in and goes hands-on. You got 3 people there. You can get this guy to the ground without hurting him.
Especially if he's unarmed.
Well, he was unarmed. You can clearly see the guy's hands, and he's in the middle of the room. He grabs the scissors as he starts exiting the room off the counter. And by the way, he didn't have the scissors held in a position where he could stab him. He had a hold of the blades. He didn't have the handle of the scissors. It's clear in this video. Now, this is one instance. I'm not saying all officers are this way. I'm saying it definitely differs from the way we train. and you asked about an increase in officer-related shootings. I gave you that in 14 years that I was with Ogden City, there were 2 suspects shot within the city. Both officers wound up retiring. Now,
yeah,
within the first 5 years after I left, there were at least 2 officer shootings every year. And that number has increased. I attribute it not because the criminals are getting more violent. I attribute it to the sway in policing philosophy. It's not the officer's fault. It's how he was trained.
Right. I've noticed a difference in officers' dress, myself, and how they dress. They're all pretty much wearing bulletproof or protective vests and other gear,
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's your regular cruiser guys,
Mm-hmm.
not the SWAT team,
Right.
but then out of the back, like you'd mentioned, out of the back of their car, they can pull out weapons of that look like they should be in a sci-fi movie or something,
Mm-hmm.
That little incident, yeah, I know she was a teenage girl, but it was out front of my house also. I had out working in the yard, and the SWAT team pulled up, and officers parked in front of my house, blocked off the street and everything, and had the weapons out, walking in series, like 4 at a time, 2 up front, 2 behind, towards where this person was coming from. I didn't know who it was, but she rounded the corner. Looked like a high school girl, my estimate around 16 years old. And you could hear her telling somebody on the phone, "Why are you doing this to me?" That's what she was screaming.
Mm-hmm.
So the officers arrested her in front of my house. She didn't have anything on her. She was wearing a long coat.
Mm-hmm.
But what had happened prior to that, I have no idea. Did she make a threat? I don't know. But did it require that much force? Was my thought.
Mm-hmm.
You know, nothing ever came of it. Just like I think the kids that were in the recent incident come out of that house. I think they were underage because it's not reported in the news.
Right.
So a lot of the pre-18-year-old students, children are having issues and acting out for whatever reason. But does it require that type of force?
Well,
I recall another incident up in Ogden. As a young man, he was underage also. The police officers had chased him. He was on foot, but they found up in the parking lot area around 25th Street. Several police officers, I don't remember how many, but the young man did brandish a weapon, and one of the officers shot him.
mm-hmm.
He didn't pull a trigger, or he didn't get it pointed, but he got shot.
Well, and a situation like that, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. You got the
Exactly.
police, and you're brandishing a weapon. You're asking for that. Now I'm gonna touch just a hair. I've kind of vented, and I don't want to throw this light stating the police are all at fault here.
No.
We talk about the dress is different, the tactics are different, but I do think times have changed. We talk about officer-related shootings, and let's talk a little bit about that political climate and what people are being led to believe. And this all came about in the Obama era with the defund the police and war on the police, and it made it acceptable to shoot a police officer. It made it acceptable to resist. Now that being the case, I'm sure that's some of the reason that the TAC gear is now being seen, uh, and that their weapons have increased. You know, the violence against the police has increased, and so there is some justification to the reason that some of these tactics
Yeah.
are coming about. Doesn't mean I have to agree with them, but I do
No.
understand the reasoning behind some of these changes.
Um, yeah, I mean, and you're gonna have like you got several officers, you have different demeanors inside of each one of those officers. They have different ideas about how things are going on. Um, maybe they're not, what I think about maybe there's not one officer that should be in charge calling shots on these ordeals.
Mm-hmm.
Saying what's going to happen, or stand down, or whatever, let's talk to him or whatever. So I don't know if any of that's going on, but if you're threatened, I mean, I know personally, if I get threatened, I'm going to do what I need to do
Oh, exactly. And you know,
to
you
prepare.
touch on a point, different personalities. I worked the majority of my career in Ogden with almost the same group of guys. We would bid our shifts together. We worked well as a team. I trusted each and every one of them. We had the same philosophies of de-escalate. None of us were afraid to go hands-on, deal with what we needed to deal with at the lowest force necessary. Uh, there were officers that worked in Ogden City at the time that if I was sent on a call of violence and that officer was sent as a backup, I would cancel my backup and handle the call alone rather than have this person there because I knew they would escalate the situation while I was trying to de escalate. I knew they would jump to more force and higher verbal escalation that would be counterproductive to me handling that call. Uh, could it have placed me in more danger? Yeah, but I had more confidence in my ability to de escalate. I also knew that one of my team members, even though he may not have been dispatched as my backup, was going to be somewhere on the peripheral. If he was writing a report somewhere, he was going to show up and sit in his car and watch and make sure things went the way I thought they were going to go. If I canceled backup, they knew what was going on with that as well. So, yeah, there are officers out there that shouldn't be handling those type of things, and there are some very good officers out there. There are bad apples in every bunch, and I don't want to throw law enforcement in general under the bus by any means. I
No,
respect
I
what they
mean,
do out there. They've got a hard
yeah,
job to do, and they're placing their
yeah.
lives in danger every time they put that uniform on. So I will back the blue. I will back the blue 100%.
uh, yeah, and I don't want to demean the law enforcement at all. That's not my point in any of this. But there is a big difference between one officer and another, and I think for the majority, the officers that I run into have good intentions. I would put it
Hmm.
that way. You know, every once in a while you run across one that's just a literal asshole, but I'll do with him like I do with other assholes that I run into. I'm not going to escalate it. Yes, sir. No, sir. Are we done here, sir? Thank you.
Yeah. Well, and that's the way to do it, and that's why we're both able to sit here today, uh, have this discussion. Um, so getting into the law enforcement aspect of, we kind of got a little off topic with crime rate. Um, the crime rates, I think, as an overall, you're hearing more about it, but it is because of an increase in population. Statistics may show a decrease in violent crimes, but what's actually being seen, heard on local news, seen in local neighborhood forums, is that fear of violence is definitely up.
Yeah, I don't like it. I don't like it one bit.
Yep.
But
And I don't know if there's a solution or an answer to it. Um, Things are going to be what they're going to be. Uh, I don't know whether the government's war on drugs to curb drugs coming in is going to have something to do with it. I don't know what pushes for weapons control. I've never believed in the take away the guns thing. Um, you outlaw guns, only outlaws will have guns. You're disarming your public that has a right to have them and that isn't committing crimes with them. So I don't think
you
I
know,
don't see that as an answer.
no, but there are some people that shouldn't have them. I don't disagree with that. Some people should not have the guns because they don't have any reason, you know. They don't have any
Mm-hmm.
mental reason. Um, but I'm pro gun. I'm pro rights, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I want my rights. I want to keep my guns. I want to, you know, I want to move forward that way. Um, I don't know what to say, you know, but if like we always talk about, you know, if people are having issues, there's better ways to take care of it than violent crime. There's better
Mm-hmm.
ways to take care of it than taking it out on your significant other or your family, you know. Um,
Exactly.
I'm here for that reason. I'm pretty sure you are too.
Absolutely. And
So,
and I try to, although I may not stay in touch or in contact with all of my friends through social medias, through other friends, I'm always checking up on them to see how they're doing. Uh, if I notice somebody's struggling, I'm definitely going to throw my 2 cents in to let them know I'm there. If they're struggling to the point where they're trying to isolate, I'm definitely going to reach out, make sure I get a hold of them. Um, Violence is never going to be the answer, and I don't know how, as a society, violence keeps cropping up. Um, it baffles me, Bones.
yeah, it does me to a certain point. Although I lived on the other side of the law for many years, I can understand exactly where that comes from, you know. Um, for myself, I know what got me there because there's some things I would have never done if I had been clean and sober. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
things I would have never done. Uh, that just escalated things to the point where uh, I would act in that manner rather than act like I should, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So um, with that experience, I could help somebody that's in that situation if they wanted to reach out to me, or if I seen it like you said, I might say something to them, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, I will say something to them.
Right. Right. Well,
So
I think we've confused the subject enough.
well, there's a plethora of confusion inside the subject, but
Yeah, there
I'm going to
is.
leave it at that.
Yeah, it
So,
statistically decrease in violent crime. What we're actually seeing, an increase in things we're hearing about. Is it just becoming more visible? Is this one of those? I never saw a Tesla until I bought one, and now they're all over the place. Or
right.
or is it actually that there are more Teslas on the road? I mean, this is the comparison. You see the violence in your neighborhood. Do you start paying more attention to it, or has the violence always been there?
Yeah,
And
if you watch this and you have an opinion or an idea or you know something that's going on that we haven't talked about, we'd like to hear it. You know,
right.
uh, so try to get this together, and I don't know if there's a resolution for any of it, but at least it can be on the forefront of everybody's mind.
Exactly. And from PadreHavoc&Bones, man, violence is never the answer. Find
Exactly.
some other way to deal with it. Uh, Take yourself and put it on a timeout. Do what you need to do, but violence is never going to be the answer.
Stay positive. Do it in a positive manner. Love y'all.